if you're doing it unnaturally, then I think that's when there should be an issue. Something that says, how did you get rid of your tribal love for Australia? I've said it before, I'm just not a very I don't understand patriotism. I just, when I was growing up, I loved the part of Melbourne that I was from. It was all I knew, and I was very, very proud of coming from the northern suburbs, and being from Epping and playing cricket for Camberfield and on all those sorts of things. Why is that less important to me than being Australian? I don't know what people in Western Australia were doing, right? Like, they're like 1,000 kilometers away, right? Like a 4 or 5 day drive from where I live. Why would I be sitting there thinking to myself that I've got something more in common with them than I do with the people who are close to me? So patriotism never made any sense to me. I look at countries like America and India, and it baffles me that people are so patriotic in those countries. I'm like, I've been to Texas and I've been to Seattle. They aren't alike, right? I've been to Kerala and I've been to Ranchi. They're not alike. Different languages, different culture, different belief systems. And so patriotism to me just doesn't make a lot of sense. I grew up, if you're asking from a cricket perspective, I grew up loving the local cricketers that I knew, and then loving the Victorian cricketers. The Australian cricketers were already third on my depth chart. All right, by the time I got there, it wasn't the same. I think I'm much more tribal with Victorian cricketers than I am with other things, but I think I'm just wired differently than other people. I don't need to. We're all part of the human race. I don't need this feeling of belonging to you. I don't need to feel like you and I are similar in order for me to feel comfortable. I understand that we're both mammals trying to do the best we can, and there are other mammals out there doing different things. I just find patriotism just nonsense and bullshit. I mean, look at how many of us live in countries that only exist because someone else drew lines on a map. Like, Australia could very well be the east coast of Australia and New Zealand as a country, and Western Australia as a separate country. So I don't, and then you've got India and Pakistan, where people grew up together in one country and then separated into other countries. Then you've got Afghanistan, where someone put a big squiggly line down the middle. And on one side, you're Pakistan, on one side, you're Afghanistan, but you're both from the same tribes, the same Afghan culture, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me that, it's just a construct. And I've never truly understood that part of it. And so it doesn't hit me the same way that it hits other people. And I'm also not religious and think, I think about religion in exactly the same way. Like, it's nonsense. Of course it's nonsense. We don't listen to people from 2,000 years ago about, what they thought about the world. If they have a good scientific fact and we can expand on it, or we can prove it, or anything else, we're willing to go with it. But the vast majority of what people thought 2,000 years ago is fucking bullshit, right? So why would I then believe fables and fairy tales put together in a book for religion? It never made any, that sort of stuff never makes any sense to me. Now, it's probably just me being wired differently than other people, right? And that's fine. Other people need religion and they need patriotism. I just have never had much use for things like that. It's just not the way that I am. As I've said before, cricket played a huge part in who I am as a person. It probably stopped me from killing myself. Not even probably. It definitely stopped me from killing myself when I was young. It has played such a bigger part in my life than my accident of birth. Now, my accident of birth is why I got into cricket. So you can't ever take the Australian cricket out of me. And it's how I learned cricket, from a club level, from a state level, from an international level, and everything else. So I'm still really proud of being an Australian, but I'm really proud of being a Victorian. And I'm really proud of coming from Melbourne. And I'm really proud of coming from the northern suburbs of Melbourne. And I'm really proud of being part of the culture in London, right? I'm really proud of all these different things in my life. Why would I suddenly think one of them is so much more important than everything else? It's a construct. It's nonsense. As I said, it's probably just the way that I am wired, and it's a little bit different than other people. But I find it very, very hard to get patriotic. And the older I get, the less patriotic I am. And yet, it doesn't mean I don't love where I'm from, because I do love where I'm from, and it made me the person I am. And also, I do love Australia as a construct. It's just that I love all these other constructs as well. So it's easy for me to go, oh, well, I can just put that to a side for a minute and have a look at this other thing. And maybe it's not as easy for other people. Maybe some people get their identity through their nationalism, and I don't think I ever did. I just don't think that was ever me, right? And I say this as someone who wore a flag when we went to cricket games and all sorts of things, but it's just not the person I am. Anyway, we've gone well away from cricket podcast here. Spiritual Hour with Jarrod Kimber. Patriotism, good or bad? But thank you very much to everyone for listening again. This is the Wagon Wheel. Remember, Patreon, if you want to support us there, it is patreon.com/Jarrod Kimber, and then you can get your questions in. Really sorry to everyone in the room who didn't get to ask many questions on this today.